we're about to take the Jameson Distillery tour. Here we go.
So it means without fear. So this really described Mr. John Jameson's life and has defined our whiskey ever since. Why? Well, here at Jameson we always push the boundaries. Ever since the first time John decided to triple distill our whiskey, he was then putting taste at the heart of everything that we do. Now, there are many characters in the Jameson story, but there was only one founding father. It all started when an enterprising John Jameson came right here to Smithfield in 1780 and set up shop. Now, Dublin was going through like the midst of a boom at the time. Its population was growing dramatically. It was actually the second largest city in Britain and Ireland at the time, and there was well over 100 breweries and distilleries across Dublin city centre. Now, many of these, they would fade away in due course, and few might have guessed it at the time. But Dublin had just gained an institution that remained on the city's north side for over 200 years. So here's the main man himself, Mr. John Jameson, with his lovely wife Margaret. Now, these were two people that shared this same kind of taste for adventure. With a bit of hard work and of course innovation, the distillery began to grow. And so did their family. So together they had 16 children together. I know. They had no Netflix back then and a lot of whiskey. So I think you know what they were doing in their spare time anyways. Yes. So this man, John Jameson II, he would then take over as master distiller. He would continue on the legacy his father had entrusted to him. Now, this legacy included hard work, constant innovation, and unmatched and unrivaled quality. This is what the distillery actually looked like in around 1820. It was actually 5 acres big. Between 1880 and 1905, this was considered the golden age of Irish whiskey. We're firing all our cylinders, or pot stills is what we call it. Now, I did say to everybody earlier, of course, Jameson's name is on the bottle, but the whiskey legacy is very, very shared. If you look closely here, you'll see 2 men carrying barrels on their back. Now, these men carrying these barrels on their back represent the hard work of workers past and present who helped build our whiskey legacy to where it is today. They're also located on every single bottle. Now, this distillery, Bow Street, was like a city within a city in Dublin. It was a bustling place. It was actually so self-sufficient. Our payroll records in our amazing archives list employees such as carpenters, blacksmiths, millwrights, painters, even ostlers. Does anybody know what an ostler is? No? They looked after the horses. That's how self-sufficient this place was. They were all really, really hard-working people. John Jameson's son had a great reputation for being a very good employer. Once hired, he generally had a job for life. Now, at its peak, this distillery employed over 300 people and supported hundreds of families right here in the Dublin area. And by 1880, this distillery alone was producing up to 1 million gallons of whiskey a year, which actually amounts to about 6.5 million bottles. Okay? Now, that's in 1880. We can produce up to 6.5 million bottles. So if I put that into a little bit of today's context for you, last year in 2019, we sold 8 million cases of Jameson, okay? And each case contains 12 bottles. So roughly over 100 million bottles sold last year in 2019. But that's with modern day infrastructure, modern day transport systems. 1880 was a time where horses and carriages still ruled the road, and a means of transport was no easy task. So 6.5 million bottles for that time period in history was like a major overachievement. So we're going to fast forward into the 20th century now. John Jameson's son were actually shipping their great tasting Irish whiskey all over the world. More and more people were enjoying the taste our Jameson had to offer. However, time and history would intervene, and it would come in the form of political and military turmoil. Now, the world broke out in war not once but twice, as I'm sure you all know. We actually had our own conflict on our own doorstep. Due to this distillery's actual prime location, it was used as a fortress during the 1916 Easter Rising. Now, tough times they did lie ahead, but Jameson's generosity will prevail. Due to the imposition of martial law imposed by the British, no worker could even gain access into this distillery just to work for more than 3 weeks. But then our payroll records state that every single employee was still paid their wage in full during the time of the shutdown. Then when things were picking up again, restricted trade tariffs imposed by Britain and the effects of prohibition in the United States, not looking at anyone in this room. American bootleggers, they actually labelled their moonshine whiskey as Jameson Irish whiskey and then sold it on at a higher price. It's pretty smart, isn't it? I'm gonna have to give it to them. Loss of momentum and damage to our good name seemed irreversible, and by 1960 the Irish whiskey industry and Jameson had basically collapsed. So in tough times, we always turn back to our motto. Sine metu. Without fear. Now this held the key to not only just surviving, but to triumphing. And in the spirit John Jameson's ways of innovative thinking, the Whiskey Guardians actually bear his name. They decided it was time to sink or to swim. And thankfully other Irish distillers came to the same conclusion, and in 1966, after centuries of rivalry, Jameson joined forces with John Power and Son and the Cork Distillery Group to form the Irish Distillers Group. Now the spirit does live on in Dublin where you all are right now, but the heart, it's now in County Cork and Middleton, where whiskey is matured and distilled to satisfy an ever-growing global demand. Now our heritage of hard work and innovation, it still does continue. And our whiskey, of course, is still steeped in craft and tradition. But our masters are playing with new ideas and new techniques that reflect the growing, expanding taste of whiskey drinkers today, like all of you. Now Jameson has always been a people's story. It's been about them men that carried the barrels on their back all those years ago. Our makers, our masters, the ostlers that looked after the horses. Even your tour guide who stands right in front of you now. Everybody that's dedicated to living up to our 239 years of heritage. So John Jameson began our story right here on Bow Street, but it's up to us to continue today. So it all comes back to what's in the bottle and on the label and sine metu. Did you enjoy your little history lesson? Yeah. So it just gives everybody a little bit of an insight into what's behind the company here. There's a lot of history here and a lot to be proud of. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to bring everybody into the process room. In there I'm actually going to teach you how we make our whiskey. Whiskey making is actually a combination of both art and science. And our masters have to oversee several steps in the process that go into making Okay, then go in for a long, deep smell. Can you smell maybe some honey, maybe like that kind of sweetness?
I like it.
after the black barrel, we're going to move on to Jameson Crescent. Crescent is, we take the two, we got bourbon barrel, we got sherry barrel. We're going to take 70% from the sherry barrel range, put them together. What do you get? You get big spices chopped in, you get Christmas cake in a bottle. That one is unique to this building. It is a 7 to 9 year whiskey. Instead of using 2 components, we use 4 components. So instead of it blending well together, they all fight against each other. So you get a nice little spicy little note on the palate. It's good. That's my Tinder video. Thank you so much. Press 1 to call me, you know. Long walks on the beach, you know, whatever you like to do.